Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight and welcome to Sappy Hour. My name is Jenna Quinn. I'm the acting conservation science and stewardship director with Ontario Nature, and I'm really pleased to be the moderator for tonight's Sappy Hour. I'm calling in this evening from my home in Kitchener. It's on the Haldimand Tract, which is the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. I'm grateful to the Indigenous people of then and now who walk on this land with care and responsibility and who lead the way in living in good stewardship and reciprocity with nature. And of course, Atlas 3 is a provincial initiative, and so no matter where you are, we're all treaty people with a responsibility to be active in the calls for reconciliation. Please feel free to share in the chat where you are joining from today, and if you don't know the territory on which you reside, then I invite you to start learning the history of the land, and we'll share a link in the chat for a great resource to help you get started. So tonight's Sappy Hour is on the theme of celebrating and summarizing Year 5, the final year of the Breeding Bird Atlas. And if you've never been to a Sappy Hour before, then welcome. You've joined at a great time to hear sort of all about what we've accomplished over the past 5 years. Sappy Hour is a play on the term happy hour, and it incorporates our Atlas mascot, the sapsucker. It's an opportunity to relax and unwind and learn a little bit more about the Ontario Breeding Bird Atlas. You can check out the recording of all the past Sappy Hour sessions on the Atlas YouTube channel. And similarly, tonight's presentation will also be recorded and posted to the YouTube channel. And if you have any questions tonight for our presenters, you can please either put them in the Q&A section if you're watching from Zoom, or if you're watching from Facebook, you can pop your questions into the comment section. So I'll turn it over then. I have the great pleasure to turn it over to Kaylin and Mike. I believe they really need no introduction as our fearless leaders here of the Atlas. So Mike and Kaylin, take it away.
Great, thank you so much, Jenna. I'm just gonna share here. Summarizing and celebrating. Awesome. I'm assuming everyone can see that all right. It's been a minute since we've had a Sappy Hour here, but super excited to be here and talk to you guys about how we did in our final year and how we did in the Atlas overall. So as you may know, most of you likely know, but we finished our final year of data collection this past year. So our data collection was from 2021 until 2025, just finished up here in December. For those who are not familiar with the coverage goals, essentially we divide the entire province up into 47 regions, which is shown here on the left. Each region is divided up into 10 by 10 kilometer squares, and that's how we make sure that we're dividing our coverage up evenly throughout the province. In each one of these squares, we want 20 hours of general atlasing during the peak season. So general atlasing is where you can kind of go out on a walk or bike ride and collect data on breeding birds, so how many you're seeing, as well as the breeding evidence. And the peak season is from May 24th to July 10th in the south, so up to Sault Ste. Marie, and then June 1st to July 10th up in the north, so north of Sault Ste. Marie. In each square, we also want 25 point counts, so where you go to a predefined station and you collect data on all the birds you're seeing and hearing for 5 minutes. And so we have different survey coverage goals depending on where you are in the province. So that darkest green on the map there, we want 100% of squares to have 20 hours and 25 point counts. In that medium green, so the Rhoda North, we want 5% of squares to have 20 hours and 25 point counts. And then in that lightest green, or the Roadless North, we want 2% of squares to have 20 hours, 25 point counts. We also had optional surveys, so surveying for birds that are not typically well surveyed for during general atlasing or during point counts. So we had surveys for owls, nightjars, and marsh birds, and those ones were optional and not part of our core survey coverage. So how did we do? Jumping right into it here, into how we did during this atlas on our survey coverage goals. So in the Roadless North, in that lightest green, we achieved 1.8% of squares reached 20 hours and 25 point counts. We are still receiving some data that's been interpreted in wild tracks, so through autonomous recording units that Mike will talk about later, where birds are recorded on these devices, and then those are interpreted to tell us what was there. So we are still receiving some data, especially from that lightest green or the roadless north. So that number might jump up a little bit, but still overall, very, very close to our coverage goals of 2%. And compared to Atlas 2, only a little bit lower than what we achieved 20 years ago. In the medium green, the roaded north, we achieved over our coverage goals. We achieved 5.6% of squares with 20 hours and 25 point counts, which is very exciting. This compared to 3.8% during Atlas 2. So an amazing job in our roaded north. Great job by the regional coordinators, atlasers, everyone who might have even traveled up to that area in getting above our survey coverage goals. In the south, in that darkest green, in the 100% zone, we achieved 83.4% of squares with 20 hours and 25 point counts. There were quite a few squares that were very, very, very close. Some were, 17 hours or 22 point counts. And so that's still an amazing achievement, especially as you compare it to Atlas 2. Even though it is in that farthest south zone, there is a lot of accessibility issues that we had in that area. So getting into the interior of Algonquin Park, we did a great job, but there's always going to be some places in Southern Ontario that are very difficult to get to. So great job, everyone that contributed all over the province. Thank you very much for your efforts. If we want to compare directly to Atlas 2, we can do so here. So this shows Atlas 2 full hours. So this is not just peak hours in Atlas 2. Atlas 2, actually, we didn't calculate peak hours. We just had it for the full year. And then Atlas 3, this is showing peak hours. So that's why the numbers are looking a little bit higher for Atlas 2 than Atlas 3 here. But you can see the direct comparison to Atlas 2 in each of these areas. Very close in terms, well, close-ish in terms of hours for the roadless north. And more point counts in Atlas 3 for the roadless north. And again, this has to do with those recording units that Mike will talk about a little bit later. More point counts in all three areas, actually. 5,000 more point counts in the roaded north and 9,000 more point counts-ish in the south. And again, the hours are showing more in Atlas 2, but as you'll see shortly, we were given Atlas 2 a run for their money in terms of hours. So as I alluded to, there were some squares that were very close to those 20 hours and 25 point counts throughout the province. And so we're showing those here. The green squares on this map are squares that achieved those 20 hours, 25 point counts, as I mentioned. And then the yellow ones we're calling passable, sufficient, acceptable, very close to complete, at least 15 hours and 20 point counts, all of those yellow squares. So when you take those into consideration, there's a significant amount more coverage. And then what's not shown here, are all of the squares in between that, still had some effort in them, but not quite complete or sufficient. So again, great job. We're so excited about all the data that we've gotten so far. All right, so this is what I was talking about a couple slides prior. When you compare Atlas 2 to Atlas 3 for total hours, it's looking a lot better than in that earlier slide. And so in terms of atlasers, we have very close to the same number of atlasers as during Atlas 2, around 2,000 atlasers. We have similar number of species, 292 versus 294 for Atlas 3. We have more squares with survey coverage this atlas than in Atlas 2. We were able to get into more places. Some of that recording unit work comes into play there as well. The number of records, this is a big one. As you can tell, a huge difference between Atlas 2 and Atlas 3. And so a record is one, like a species on a checklist. But in Atlas 2, a single checklist was used for the entire year. Whereas during Atlas 3, each time you go out, you're starting a new checklist and recording those species every time you go out. So that's why the number of records is significantly increased in Atlas 3 compared to Atlas 2. And that's just given us a lot more data to work with. We don't actually know all of the ways that these data might be used in the future for, impact assessments, all sorts of other things. So great to have the more data, the better, as I love to say. So that'll be really great for everyone. Number of point counts has increased by over 30,000. So in Atlas 2, Atlas 2 was the first atlas in Canada to use point counts. And so it was kind of a newer thing for us, and we were just getting started with those. But this year, everyone who did point counts last time already had their feet under them, and everyone else is really caught on quick. So that's great. Total number of hours, as I said, Atlas 2 was total hours for the year. So you can compare 150,000 to our total for like non-peak hours, which is 170,000. And then in brackets there, it's just showing peak hours, which is 100,000 hours, which is a lot of hours, guys. All right, special surveys. So these are the optional surveys. They're not part of our total like coverage effort of just the hours and the point counts, but optional for species that are not easily detected on those other surveys. So we have lots of owl surveys. We have screech owl surveys. We have the northern owls, central owls, hawk owls. So screech owls were the surveys that were taken on the most. There were some screech owl surveys done in Atlas 2, but it wasn't as structured or like as widespread, I guess, as it was for Atlas 3. So lots of screech owl surveys conducted, and those were in the southern parts of the province where there's also the most people as well. Lots of nightjar surveys conducted. We had some staff doing marsh bird surveys as well, so those numbers are quite high as well. But overall, for surveys that were not mandatory, like these optional surveys, we're super excited about all of the data that has come in for all of these surveys. You guys did an amazing job. Some people were very, very dedicated, especially with those owl surveys. So it was really great to see people getting involved in different aspects of the atlas and just getting out there. Okay, so how did coverage, go, I guess, across the 5 years of the project? As some of you may remember, the very first year of the atlas was peak pandemic, unfortunately for us. It was during COVID years. People weren't able to travel around a lot, and yet we still did get a lot of peak hours. People were really capitalizing on being able to atlas close to home. It was the first year, so there everywhere was a gap, and so that, I guess, did work itself in our favor a little bit for people to just be able to stay close to home and be able to atlas, whereas in future years, obviously, people had to kind of go further afield to find empty squares. I think 2022, anecdotally at least, we noticed a lot of people getting out and doing their traveling that they missed in 2020 and 2021. I think that that's the reason for the dip in the number of peak hours in 2022. But again, that's just me and some, in my conversations with folks going out. And then 2023, we're back with a bang. Lots and lots of hours, 21,500 hours of effort in 2023 alone. So overall, again, we had over 100,000 peak hours, which is just mind-blowing to me. So, I'm extremely humbled. Mike is also extremely humbled. I'm just going to speak for him because we've talked about this, but extremely humbled by all of the efforts by everyone. Point counts, again, 2023, most point counts of the entire project. And so 2023 was just a really great year for atlasing. Everyone was getting out into the field, but, every year counts, and we're still receiving some of those point counts through the recording units for 2025. So I think that number will go up a little bit still. Okay, so this is just kind of a map to show us how we went. I know overall we talked about the percentage of squares in the south, in the roaded north, and in the roadless north that achieved their targets. But this is just to show you, how things went overall. As I mentioned, some of those interior Algonquin squares a little bit harder to get to. Some places close to that southern Ontario, northern Ontario boundary, also a little bit challenging to access, but overall, just a great job. We have so much data. This is just going to be so great. I can't wait to see how it all comes together. This is the block effort. So this is for the roaded north and the roadless north, just the percentage of hours, the percentage of peak hours that were completed. So the darker the color, the better it is in terms of how close it is to achieving the coverage goals in that block. So to achieve 5% of squares in the region, we wanted 5 squares per block. Each block is 100 by 100 kilometers. So, and then in the roadless north, it would be 2 squares per block. So that's kind of where we get these numbers from and how we calculate the percentage towards the block completion. So here we have point counts, and it's a very similar map in the south to the peak hours map. Again, some places in Algonquin and close to that Southern Ontario, Northern Ontario border, a little bit harder to access, but overall, everyone did such a great job. We got into so many of the squares and have a lot of really great data to contribute. And point counts. So again, those recording units contribute a lot in that roadless north and a little bit in the roaded north as well. Mike was going to talk about that in just a minute. But yeah, overall, great job. The regional coordinators, atlasers, folks traveling into the roaded north and the roadless north on those northern trips to get some of these blocks complete. You guys did a really great job. Thank you for all your efforts. I'll hand it over to Mike to start in on these digital point counts.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks, Kaylin. And yeah, it is very humbling and kind of mind-boggling at the same time to see those maps and see just like Ontario is gigantic, and to know how much effort went in to get all that data collected. It's pretty exciting stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna keep talking about some of our coverage and then talk a little bit about some of the results so far. So Kaylin alluded to it a bunch. We've got some new technology this time around, this atlas. One of those are these handheld zoom units. In the photo that you see here, that's Jean Cull, and she's got a zoom unit, a handheld zoom unit. In this case, loaded up on a tripod. And these are really high quality recorders. We had a whole bunch of them out with the regional coordinators out for loan to atlasers who are interested in helping conduct digital point counts. And this is, I think, such a cool addition to the Atlas protocols because it allowed people to go out and do point counts, even if they weren't confident in their ability to identify, basically every species they see or hear. So we had a huge contribution over the years. It was kind of slow getting going in the first year. People weren't really sure what was all about. We got a lot bigger uptake, almost 2,000 digital point counts in 2022. And then we had almost 4,000 digital point counts collected in year 3 and year 4, and then still 3,000 conducted in our final year. And the map here gives you a sense of it really was across the province, these digital point counts. Some of the northern trippers were taking these along with them, which was a nice way to back up the results they're writing in their notebook or they're entering through their app. So this was a huge new tool that really helped us expand our point count coverage in the province. Next slide there. All right, and then the other piece of new tech that we had at our disposal this time around were these autonomous recording units, or ARUs. And there's a couple different types of these units. Some of them are called song meters. That's the brand a lot of people know. But basically, these are the little mini computers and microphones. These ones, unlike the handheld zoom units, these ones get placed somewhere. Usually they'd be like belted or strapped to a tree and left for a couple days, sometimes just a single day, but they're pre-programmed to turn on at set times. And the really cool thing about these is some of them have really amazing battery lives. So they can be deployed in the winter and then they sort of sit in hibernation and then turn on once the breeding season starts. They might record every morning for an hour or two and then go back to sleep. And then they go back to a more of a hibernation at the end of the breeding season, and they can be picked up a year or two later even. So we had amazing deployments of these ARUs with government partners. So the federal government with the Canadian Forest Service and Canadian Wildlife Service, who deployed a lot of these units that you see across the province in the unroaded north, especially. These are really amazing deployments into places by helicopter, conducted by Canadian Wildlife Service with support from the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources. And that really allowed us to cover not only a huge chunk of the province that we might not have otherwise been able to cover, but it also allowed us to cover places that are really, really hard to get to in the summertime. Some of these were deployed by snowmobiles, but a lot were done by helicopter before it gets too wet to land a helicopter in some of these places. So Very, very exciting stuff. The number of ARUs deployed across the province. The colors just indicate what year they were deployed. So you can see it really was a 5-year project to get all this coverage. And we're getting some of our coolest results are going to come from these surveys that were done in places and habitats that we really never got good coverage anytime previously. So pretty cool stuff. If you go to the next slide there, Kaylin, this is one example of a species that the ARUs did a phenomenal job surveying for. So this is great cheek thrush. And in this map, you will see there are 42 squares where great cheek thrush was recorded in this atlas. If you tap next, Kaylin, that individual square is the only square that was recorded by a human in person. All the other squares were recorded by these ARUs. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is great cheek thrush is in these habitats away from rivers, usually in the remote north. And so most of our coverage by humans happens along the coast or along rivers where they can get by canoe. So we kind of miss great cheek thrush. And then the other factor that the ARUs are really helpful for is humans. The humans are kind of lazy. They go to sleep. They want to go to sleep at night. They get in their tent and get all cozy. They don't want to go surveying at night. But great cheek thrush really likes to sing right at dusk when most atlasers are thinking about bedtime. So really cool results for great cheek thrush, really changing our understanding of this species thanks to these surveys done as part of the atlas. All right, and that's a good segue into our significant species, rare species that the atlas is really important for developing information for, great cheek thrush included. Over the course of the 5 years, we collected almost 500,000 breeding evidence records of species that we tagged as significant. So either provincially rare or species of interest. So some of those were species at risk. Some of them are species that we think could become species at risk in the future. Of those 400,000 records, 80,000 came just this past year. You'll also remember we were really trying to get people to use this pinning tool within the app and the web entry where you could pin the exact location. And we had almost 100,000 pins collected over the course of the 5 years, and about 20,000 of those collected just this past year. In terms of species at risk, we had 175,000 records of 51 species at risk over the course of the 5 years, and 36,000 of those, and almost the same number of species were just from 2025. I've got a few highlight photos here. These are species that we had kind of interesting information come in just in this past year. So Harris's sparrow there on the left. This was another one that the ARUs really gave us some information for. We had 2 previous squares in the first 4 years of the atlas for Harris's sparrow along the Hudson Bay coast. But we added 4 more squares using those ARUs in the northwestern part of the Hudson Bay lowlands. And there was one location where there was actually 2 Harris's sparrows singing back and forth on some of the recordings. So pretty cool stuff. Sticking in the Hudson Bay lowlands, the middle species there, black scoter. We had a banner year for collecting data on black scoters, thanks to some aerial waterfowl surveys conducted by CWS Ontario, Canadian Wildlife Service Ontario. If you get a chance to go browse our species maps, you'll see lots of black scoter squares lit up just this past year, thanks to those surveys. And then another really cool highlight, this time from Southern Ontario, was the lark bunting that was present for a little over a week in Chatham, Kent, down in southwestern Ontario, that a lot of birders and a lot of atlasers got a chance to enjoy. So there's some pretty cool, significant records just this past year. All right, now that's the sort of rare, but we're also very interested in the common species. And these are your top 10. There may be a few shifts, but I kind of think this is going to be it. This is going to be our top 10 for number of squares for species. And we haven't said it yet, but you should be taking notes here because we do have a quiz at the end with some prizes. So there may be a question related to this one, but American robin ended up on top with the very most squares reported. That's about 70% of the squares or so that we were able to survey had an American robin detected. White-throated sparrow was a very close number 2, and red-eyed vireo was just behind that. And then Nashville warbler rounded out the top 10. Okay. And of course, we can't talk about all that data without recognizing some of the major contributions by volunteers. I mean, I'm not a volunteer, so I feel like I should be on there. But some amazing totals here in terms of number of records, checklists, squares visited, regions, species. These are the top 10 in terms of number of records submitted. So if you see somebody you know there, make sure you give them a congratulations when you see them next. And of course, we really focus in on point counts. Point counts are such important data for the Atlas. They really give us the highest quality information that we can use in a lot of our models and to compare back to Atlas 2. So a special shout out to the volunteers on this one as well that collected a ton of point count data for us. So thank you very much to those folks as well and everybody else who collected. Yeah, there was a ton of highlights this past year. I mean, it was kind of bittersweet knowing it was the final year of data collection. It was really fun to get out on square bashes. That's the top 3 photos are photos from different square bashes. They ranged from very hot and balmy to practically winter-like, as you can see from our attire. We had a great field crew this summer as well. We had 12 field staff out in 3 different crews, covering a ton of effort to fill in gaps. And we had some great kickoff events this spring as well. That's the bottom sort of row of photos. And then for Kaylin and I, a big highlight of the season was the Beast, the Bird Emergency Atlas Survey Team. And that photo on the right there of Kaylin and I in the dark. That was us on the very last day of peak season as we were getting ready to head out and cover a couple more of those Beast squares that needed last minute help. So those were all big highlights of this final year. And it was so much fun to not just go out and collect the bird data, but to do it with some really great people around the province as well. Now, the North always is extra challenging for us to get coverage. And so just like the past several years, we had a sort of a slate of northern trips into remote areas. Most of these were fly-in trips. All of these were fly-in trips, rather. And these trips are the ones that we ended up managing to go. We had a couple others that ended up getting scrapped for various logistical reasons, including fire and lack of aircraft and things like that. But we were very happy in the end with what managed to get done. We had a great trip for 4 Atlasers to Big Trout Lake, 4 Atlasers into Birch Bark Lake, 2 Atlasers into Cat Lake. We had 4 go into Little Sachigo Lake. And one of the cool things about that trip was Stéphane Manu, one of our Atlasers. He did that exact same trip 20 years ago in Atlas 2. So pretty cool for him to get to go back. And then we had a trip to the Penn Islands on the Hudson Bay coast with Ministry of Natural Resource and Canadian Wildlife Service staff to get some of the last parts of the coast covered. We had a really cool sounding trip into Apinagao Lake there in the green. And then we had 2 Atlasers into Pledger Lake and some volunteers into Kasagami Lake as well, south of Moosonee. So some great photos there on the right. Yeah, that is huge highlights for me just to get to see the photos. But some of the cool stuff that these trips found was also a big highlight. So that's kind of how things went with our coverage. I want to talk a little bit about some early trends that we're seeing and some of the things that we're working on. So the map here is going to be one of the types of map that you'll get to see once we finish the final publication in a year and a half from now. This is Canada Warbler showing on the left, the map that's in green, yellows and greens, that's showing relative abundance of Canada Warbler. So this uses the abundance information from point counts. and looks at which areas have the most Canada warblers. So you can see kind of along Lake Superior, the north shore of Georgian Bay and Lake Huron, and then into Algonquin Park and North Bay. That's kind of the big important band for Canada warblers in Ontario. There's some in southern Ontario, and there's some kind of north into the Boreal, but really the majority of the relative abundance is in that sort of band along sort of Thunder Bay to Algonquin Park. The really cool thing, and we've said this a lot, I'm sure you're sick of hearing us say this if you've been to a lot of our Sappy hours, is now we're going to be able to compare that relative abundance map to a similar map from 20 years ago from Atlas 2. And so we're going to be able to generate maps like this on the right, the one that shows blue and red, showing, okay, well, how did they change? How did the relative abundance change between atlases? So this is a very, very first draft, obviously, and we're still refining our models and things like that. But on first glance, it looks like the area kind of around Thunder Bay to Lake Nipigon and then the north shore of Lake Huron are areas where Canada warbler has increased in relative abundance and is doing well. But even though there's a lot in the, for instance, Algonquin Park, it looks like they've perhaps declined there. And then same with sort of the area up towards Cochrane and Timmins and Kapuskasing, that sort of thing. And then in northwestern Ontario as well, they're showing a minor decline. So these are the things that are really going to help us see what's happening with our bird populations and start to come up with plans for what we need to do to better conserve the species. So there are some other trends that we wanted to share. So we've got a few of these rotating GIFs, animated maps showing Atlas 1, 2, and 3 to show how different species have changed over the 3 atlases. So this is a familiar species we've talked about a few times. This is purple martin, and this is a bird that is showing many fewer squares from Atlas 1 to 2, and then that decline looks like it's continued into Atlas 3. So it'll be interesting to see the other maps as we get through this species analysis. So that's a species that's not doing well. Bald eagle, on the other hand, is doing very well. In Atlas 1, it was really a species of northern Ontario and really mostly northwestern Ontario. In Atlas 2, they started to fill in along the north shore of Lake Erie and a bit into the rest of southern Ontario. But the change even from Atlas 2 to 3, like they're in almost every square in southern Ontario. It's pretty incredible. So a great news story as far as this species goes. We have some change maps showing for what's happening with squares for things like red-bellied woodpecker. And so this one, everything in blue are places that they've increased. They've shown up in those squares since the first atlas. So the gray squares are places where they were reported in all 3 atlases. For red-bellied woodpecker. Anything orange are places where they were found in Atlas 2, but they weren't found this atlas. So we lost them from maybe a dozen squares. The light blue are places where they weren't in Atlas 1, but then they were found in Atlas 2. So they kind of filled in southwestern Ontario and the north shore of Lake Ontario after Atlas 2. And then between Atlas 2 and 3, the range expansion has really continued right up to the southern edge of the Canadian Shield, up to Ottawa, Sault Ste. Marie, Manitoulin Island. And then there's scattered records all through the Canadian Shield as well. In sort of the southern shield and anyways, so pretty cool to see trends like this for the red-bellied woodpecker and other species. We look forward to sharing those in the publication. Now, a species that is kind of doing the opposite of red-bellied woodpecker is boreal chickadee, and you see a real mix of yellows and oranges and blues in sort of the northern half of the province. So it's kind of like some areas we found them and they weren't in last atlas, and then vice versa. So it looks kind of like a wash in the northern half of the province, I would say. But in the southern half, kind of from Sault Ste. Marie and Sudbury south, You see a lot of yellows and oranges. So yellows are places where they were detected in Atlas 1, but not 2 or 3. And then the orange are places where they were present in Atlas 2, but they were not present in Atlas 3. So you see the big cluster of orange around Algonquin Park. They almost have totally disappeared from Algonquin Park in just the last 20 years. It's pretty mind-boggling how much fewer they are. So really sort of showing us that there's something to be aware of, that there's a big change happening for this species. Okay, so those are some sneak peeks of what are some trends we're seeing, and the number of trends we're going to be able to share is going to be huge once we finish the publication. So what is next? So to most of you, the Atlas has finished. For Kaylin and myself and Jenna and Scott and others who work on the Atlas, we have a lot of work still ahead of us. We are working really hard on planning the publication at this point. We're doing a lot of data review these days, and we're getting ready for species accounts to be written this summer. So we plan on having data review finished up soon, and then we're going to be generating maps like you just saw for all the species of Ontario and handing them over to our species account authors this summer. So we're in the process of picking our species account authors and letting them know this spring that they've been chosen to write a species account. Those accounts are going to get written this summer, and then those are the first drafts. And then we'll be updating those with the updated finalized versions of all the maps and things like that in the fall and early winter, finishing up those species accounts by the spring and getting everything translated, and then sending it off to the publisher kind of by late spring. So we're planning on having a book and a website all ready to go by fall 2027 to be able to share all the news that the Atlas is learning about our bird species late fall 2027. So we've got a lot to do between now and then in the next year and a half, but we're looking forward to having that information out there. The website will be free to access. The book will be available for Atlasers in a pre-sale sometime kind of next winter. And yeah, we can't wait to hopefully have all of you get your hands on a copy of that book and check out the website. So yeah, the last note there is we know a lot of you have already told us that you're wondering what you're going to do with all your spare time this summer and spring. So we will be sharing suggestions on other community science projects that you might consider joining now that you have a huge void in your life. But there's lots of great activities that you can contribute your bird knowledge to help birds this summer, even though you're not going to be atlasing. So watch for that information from us in the relatively near future. Okay. I think we're ready for trivia. So we've got 6 questions, 6 trivia questions. And I think we have some hats that we're going to give away as prizes to the winners. Sweet. So if you're on Zoom, just you'll see the polls come up to answer the questions right in Zoom. If you're on Facebook, you can just type in the answer and then keep track of your score. It's the honor system, and we'll see how you did at the end. That sound good? Okay, let's start with the first question. Okay, so this is one of these rotating maps. Which species does this rotating map belong to? Oh man, this is hard. We started off really hard. I forgot how hard I made this. Okay, there's your question. So, or there's your possible answers. Which species is this? So it looks like a species that has declined, kind of retreating southwards, it looks like. So in Atlas 1, it was kind of onto the Canadian Shield, and then the species has sort of declined at the northern edge of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence lowlands. There's your hint.
We're battling it out between two answers right now. So just give it another second.
It's so much easier when you're looking when you know the species. Yeah.
All right. I'm about to end it. So if anyone is hovering over the button, then okay, I'm gonna end it. I'll share the results first. Are you seeing the results?
I'm seeing the results.
Okay, cool. Everyone should be then.
House finch was the top choice, followed by house sparrow. Those are both really good guesses. That I would have a hard time between those two as well. Okay, what is it? Da-da-da-da-da-da. House sparrow. Okay. So those of you not in the majority, but the near majority, guessed house sparrow. So good job. House finch was a very good guess. I mean, they're all good guesses. Yeah, house finch probably has a fairly similar pattern. Maybe not as many in the very northern part of the range. Okay, question 2. Okay, it's another rotating map. Atlas 1, Atlas 2, Atlas 3. So, which species is this? So in Atlas 1, it was found, there's a lot around Sudbury to sort of North Bay to Sault Ste. Marie and the Bruce Peninsula, Thunder Bay, Rainy River. And then by Atlas 3, it's really just the Bruce Peninsula, Sault Ste. Marie, and Rainy River. So something that's common in Rainy River, relatively common in Rainy River and the Bruce Peninsula. That's your hint.
All right, the answers are rolling in. I feel like people were cautious at first, but now they're coming in pretty quickly. So
okay,
we'll give it another second or two.
Sounds good.
I think
another hard one. I should have put these two at the end. I feel like these are the hardest of the 6 questions.
No one's dropped off the call yet, so
that's a good sign.
Okay. We have about the same number that contributed last time, so I might just end it. You have a couple more seconds. Okay, I'll end.
The answer. All right. Brewer's Blackbird. 46% of you got it right. Nice job.
Thanks, Rick.
That was an easy one. Okay, question 3. So this one is a different kind of map. So remember, this is showing the blues are gains, the yellows and oranges are losses, the dark blue are gained after Atlas 2, and light blue are gained after Atlas 1. So if I'm looking at this, I see most of central Ontario, it's been present, all 3 atlases. In the north, it's kind of a mix. Some gains, some losses, no overwhelming color. In the south, though, is where you're seeing big changes. There was sort of a spreading south, a little off the shield after Atlas in Atlas 2. That's the light blue. And then a lot more spreading into southwestern Ontario in the dark blue after Atlas in Atlas 3. We're getting them rolling in.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I feel like your explanation definitely helped people feel more confident about their choice. So
there's a lot going on these maps.
Yeah,
I mean, we got 3 atlases worth of data. So I feel like you need a bit of a. I've looked at a lot of these maps, so have you, Kaylin, but not everybody has. So yeah,
exactly. All right, there's 2 people that we're at the normal amount of people that have been submitting. Oh, 1 extra. Someone was extra confident on this one. All right, I'm ending it. I'll share the results here.
All right. 52% of you are correct. Common Raven. Merlin is a very good guess. And so is bald eagle. Those are all very good guesses. I mean, they're all good guesses. That's why we had those species as options to try to trip you up. Yeah. All right. I think we're done with the maps. Okay. Yeah, we're done with the map. So after this final year, which species is in the top 10 for squares with breeding evidence? Remember, I gave you this hint, so everybody should get this one right. You probably memorized that table, no problem. Which species is in the top 10 for most squares with breeding evidence? Lots to choose from. Do you know the answer, Caitlin?
I don't actually know.
You weren't paying attention.
I was focusing on flipping the slides,
Okay.
I can't vote on it anyway. I'll just steal someone else's answer. Whichever one most people vote on. Okay, we have a few more that we usually get, so I'll hold out for them. Okay, I'm gonna end it.
Okay. And black-capped chickadee. That was a good guess, but it was common raven. So
Nice.
here's the table. This is the top 20, so you can see where all those species that were options landed. So black-capped chickadee was number 15. It's not in the top 10. Chipping sparrow was number 14. American crow was number 20. Ovenbird was 12. And we already said black-capped chickadee. Alder flycatcher was number 19. So only common raven was in there, and common raven was fifth most squares, which is like absolutely incredible if you think back to what they were like 20 years ago. That they're now the fifth most widespread species, arguably, in the province.
Nice.
All right, question 5. Okay, so these ones are really cool. And we actually just pulled these data together like a couple hours ago. So it's new information for Kaylin and I. So which species had the biggest gain in terms of total number of squares since Atlas 2? Common raven just keeps showing up on these lists.
I feel like that would be a good guess based on the last question.
It would be. It would be. We wouldn't make it that easy.
No.
Or would we?
Maybe I'm just throwing everyone off here. People seem pretty confident in this one, though. People guessed or made their choices pretty quickly. We're already at most of
Okay.
So only a few holdouts who are taking their time with it.
So I'll admit, I want to admit something here. I made the list of options before I actually knew the answer.
Oh, so it's not on the list.
Well, that's
I'm
not
just kidding.
necessarily true.
Here you go.
Okay, bald eagle was the first choice, followed by red-bellied woodpecker. The answer is actually sandhill crane. We more than doubled the number of sandhill crane squares, with 1,251 new squares, more squares for sandhill crane, and I was mind-boggled to see northern parula up there. I mean, they have, like, I guess it didn't surprise me totally, but I wouldn't have expected it to be that high up on the list.
Yeah.
So pretty cool, really cool to look at this. I can't wait to look at that full spreadsheet tomorrow when I have more time. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome.
Good job for those of you who guessed sandhill crane.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. Okay, so this is the opposite. Which species had the biggest loss in terms of number of squares between Atlas 2 and Atlas 3? So the opposite. There's now a lot fewer squares. I think this one's harder.
People have a preference on this one.
Oh, okay.
I like it. Okay, I think we're pretty well there. Oh, a couple more just submitted. Okay, I'm gonna end it.
All right, let's see the guesses. Purple martin, overwhelming favorite. The answer is none of the above. It was actually evening grosbeak, which has a net change of minus 645 squares since Atlas 2, which is pretty alarming. Also alarming is to see some of these other species up there. American herring gull, sharp-shinned hawk, harrier. Those are all ones I didn't. So again, I made that list without having seen what the answer was. So a blue-winged teal I had on the list, but that's number 5. Black duck's on the list. That's number 7. Kestrel's on there. I think upland sandpiper was like just off the cutoff, and same with purple martin.
Wow.
So, yeah, none of the above. That might have weeded out. How many people guessed none of the above? I don't know if there wasn't many. That might have
No
really
one
weeded
did.
out. No one did. Okay, well,
I wouldn't have guessed that.
did anybody get 6 out of 6?
Not sure. I
Just
feel
put
like
it.
we will be able to check the results after too.
Oh, can we? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll check the results and see how people did. And if you were one of the top scorers, we will reach out to you by email and arrange to get you a hat. Okay, cool. That ends the trivia. I feel like we could do that for another hour. Probably it'd be pretty fun. Okay, that's our presentation. I don't know, Jenna, do you want to jump in here now?
Sure, yeah, just to say thank you both. That was so great to kind of reflect on the season, and fun to end with trivia. And it's just really wonderful to see sort of everything that has been achieved over the last 5 years. And I am really excited about this next phase as well, and what the publication is going to look like. And a lot of work to be done still, but I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, thanks. I don't think we had many questions. I don't know if you saw anything come in, Kaylin, that I missed. Oh, I'm just seeing the chat blow up now. Is relative abundance measured by point counts? Angie has asked.
Yeah, so that those maps that you're seeing are just using point counts. We're still basically trying to see if we can incorporate like maybe stationary counts into those abundance estimates. But those ones that you're seeing right now are just using point counts. That may change by the time you see the final versions in the book in a year and a half.
Great. Okay, we had a couple questions come in, so we'll answer these. I think they'll be quick. Barb asked, "Do you need any more authors for the species accounts?"
Well, we don't actually know yet. we're currently so the expression of interest form we had up for a few weeks there. We closed it on the 16th of February. We had a really great turnout. We had, I think, 160 or 170 people put their names forward. So we have not had a chance to go through all those submissions yet to see are all the species accounted for with authors that are qualified to do that. So we don't really know. If we feel like we need to ask again, we will. But yeah, we don't actually know as of right now. I don't know, Kaylin, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that you answered that pretty well. So I was looking at some of the other questions in the chat too.
Okay, next question is from Michael. How much content will be on the web but not in the book?
I can answer that one. Yeah, so we're planning to have all of the same content, or as much as the same content on both. We want all of the content to be as accessible to as wide a range of folks as possible. And so, yeah, there might be some additional photos on the web just because we're kind of constrained by space in the print version of the publication. So maybe some additional like advanced or higher breeding evidence codes like eggs, nests, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, the main bulk of the info should be on both.
Great. Dave asks, will the BBS point counts get wrapped into the abundance as well? I think this was discussed earlier on in the Atlas.
Yeah, we're definitely planning on bringing in the BBS data into the Atlas. It remains to be seen how those get incorporated exactly into which analyses, but that is the plan, that they would get incorporated into that. That was the whole point of us doing the 3-minute and 2-minute point counts. They're basically just a shortened version of our point count. So that's the plan, and they will be brought in. That's still exactly the details to TBD.
Great. Angie asks, how does general atlasing data inform the Atlas reporting?
Yeah, I can answer this. So general atlasing, as opposed to point counts, informs the distribution maps. So those maps that show the highest breeding evidence per species per square, as well as whether species have, been there since Atlas 1, how those change over time. As Mike said, some of those stationary lists might be able to be used in those relative abundance maps or those kind of heat maps that we're showing. So yeah, those are the two main ways. The data can also be used for phenology. So, when birds start nesting and those sorts of things, we're planning on having some information or trying to include some information on phenology as well. So those are the ways that it'll be included in the atlas.
Awesome. Okay, one last question from Eric. How many copies are planned for the publication? Should I worry about not getting a copy? Thanks for already the enthusiasm, Eric.
Yeah, we don't know how many we're planning to print. I think we're doing the pre-sale to help inform some of those numbers as well. So I think that if you keep an eye out for our pre-sale, you'll definitely get one. But I think we should be good because we're planning on making some informed choices there.
Amazing. Okay, well, thanks everyone again. If you didn't get your question answered tonight, you can always email us at atlas@birdsontario.org. And a reminder that this will be posted on the YouTube channel if you want to go back and watch it again or share it with anyone else, or you want to challenge someone to the trivia at the end. So I'll turn it over. Any final remarks from you, Mike and Kaylin?
Yeah, I just want to say sincerely thank you to everyone who's involved in the project in collecting data. As you saw, it's a crazy, crazy amount of data and a big project and a big province, and there's absolutely no way that Mike and I or the Atlas team would be able to do it without all of you. So just wanted to say thanks.
Yeah, absolutely true. Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for whatever role you've played in helping make the Atlas a success over these last 5 years. Good night, everybody.
Thanks. Night, everyone.
Everybody.